Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more Wilds. Today is finally the day that we take a look at the weapons and do our usual rankings, this time for Title Update 2. This initial look had me checking all the top runs for Tempered Lagiacrus and Sergios, only to find a great variety in what's been achieved so far. Some weapons have a ton of runs with all-star difficulties for, say, one of the monsters, and then for one of the others, there's basically nothing. But I mean, it's the first week and people are really focusing in on what they want to do. So as usual, here's how we do it. We're going to look at the fastest clear times we could currently find for Tempered Lagiacrus to begin with. The usual rule here is pretty much anything but no heroics for initial lists, but we do have one that uses it that we're going to mention at the end. But with that in mind, take this all with a heavy grain of salt. Don't take this too seriously. These runs reflect the current available runs, not what's truly possible for the weapon. It just gives us an initial look, and that is fun to consider. For the list today, we do have something interesting we need to explain, which is the fact that we couldn't just look at 5-star versions of all the hunts. There's a bit of variety, which we'll mention as we go. 3-star compared to 5-star just means larger damage increases for the monster attacks and a slight health increase, so it will affect the time a bit, as we'll mention. We'll work our way up from the bottom, starting now with Lance, with this Tempered Lagiacrus run of 6 minutes and 27 seconds. Unfortunately, we don't have like the best footage options for this, but this is one of the best runs by far that we've been able to find. This makes sense because Lance didn't really have major changes in Title Update 2, and it was always one of the ones that was at the back of the list generally in terms of output. So nothing really made me think it would suddenly jump forward to first place or something, and it being towards the back makes sense. However, I don't think this is the best representation of Lance at this time. Compared to other runs, this is a run that also is heavily affected by the fact that it does have to go underwater and do the underwater section, whereas most of the runs we're going to look at today basically deal so much DPS that they never reach the underwater section, which slows down a run by a massive amount, obviously. So better run potential for the Lance is there, but I do expect it to be at the back of the pack like we see here. Next up, we have the bow, with a 5 minute and 35 second clear time for Tempered Lagiacrus here. Anyway, despite this being one of the slower runs today, obviously they still do it without having to deal with the water section, which makes a massive difference on the run overall. There is actually a zone transition. As Lagiacrus is on the way to that nest area and then eventually, we'd be dealing with the water, he gets ahead at area 13 and drops a boulder on Lagiacrus while it's going through the different areas. This pulls Lagiacrus out of the water for a free DPS window and is why it's managed in the time that we see today. So if you were unaware that you can do that when it's going towards the nest, it's a good thing to know. But yeah, bow, one of those weapons that really benefits from running heroics and doing great with it. So it being towards the back when not using heroics, it makes sense. Okay, next up we have Switch Axe with a 3 minute and 56 second clear, so it's our first under 4 minute run. Things get a lot tighter from here time wise. You've got the really reliable sword counter for most of the attacks. You can full release just kind of ball through with hyper armor, so you're able to just kind of full release spam, which is what the Switch Axe needs to be doing. I actually think the potential for Switch Axe can be a lot higher in terms of time in this list, but as you're going to hear as we go here, it gets really close anyway. The fight fully takes place in one area, and this is because of the player's careful and clever use of the lure pod to interrupt the Lagiacrus leaving every single time. Then eventually a trap is used to hold it down again when it's going to leave. So this is kind of explaining why there's such a difference between the last run and this one, and is going to become a common theme as we go through the rest of the runs. Okay, next up we have light bowgun with a 3 minute and 48 second clear time. This is slightly faster than the Switch Axe run, but in this case I'm not certain what star level it is. I believe based on the title this is a 3-star Lagiacrus, whereas compared to Switch Axe as we just talked about, that was a 5-star, which is going to add a noticeable amount of health. Not a massive amount, but a noticeable amount. So you could argue that Switch Axe and light bowgun pretty interchangeable based on what we've seen. Anyway, it should be what you expected to see here. The light bowgun firing off blasts of fire and maximizing its peak element damage into Lagiacrus. Interestingly, a lot of the aim is at the back spikes, which is a really nice thing to be able to do as a ranged player like this, to absolutely devastate its back, an optimal hit zone that is a bit hard to reach for melee at all times. Is this going to be the peak of light bowgun? Hard to say, but I do think the weapon has a ton of potential, even in this fight, again with an out of reach hit zone like that. So we'll have to see if that changes as more runs come in, but a very solid showing to say the least. Alright, next up we have Sword and Shield with a 3 minute and 44.98 second clear, so just about 3 seconds faster than the last one. That's how close this is. Unfortunately on this one I'm not sure what star level it actually is, but interestingly it does start in a different zone to the ones we just looked at with the other fast times, with hyper focus on the front right arm to get a knockdown. This SNS user starts to blast the back for that optimal hit zone as soon as possible. What's great about SNS though is obviously you can do those dashes and leaps up the side of the monster and reach higher up, usually at ranged locations. So that benefit of the ranged weapon of light bowgun still applies to SNS in this case, which is good for this monster. I do find it interesting watching SNS deal with this. There's that big back explosion attack that spreads the lightning out, and how a lot of weapons have a way to bull through that, or a clever way to avoid it. Like dual blades, you can double dash through it, which is super satisfying by the way. I've seen longsword users use Helmbreaker to still leap over it and get DPS out at the same time. This SNS user is forced to walk away though, so maybe they just don't have a way to avoid it. Speaking of dual blades then, we're up to the next ranking with dual blades and a 3 minute and 39 second clear. As another weapon that's able to output great element, this works well with the fire element in this case. But this player makes use of the big boulder drop at the waterfall. Since this hunt started in area 15, unlike all of the other runs that we've looked at, this boulder does a massive amount of damage and also causes a free knockdown, giving this dual blades user actual access to the back spikes for that great DPS. As Lagiacrus actually makes an area transfer though, we see that same situation we saw earlier, where yeah, they successfully interrupt Lagiacrus' path with that boulder drop, giving them an amazing DPS window, and that's when they get the capture. So a little unusual, and I would argue that this pushed this ranking higher than maybe it should be, but still a very impressive showing in general. Jumping forward then, our next weapon is Greatsword with a 3-star Lagiacrus with a 3 minute and 38 second clear. Anyway, it's a super satisfying run to watch because goddamn is offsetting Lagiacrus just awesome, and doing it multiple times in a row. But this user uses an interesting trick in area 14 where they drop a barrel bomb at a structure in area 14 to bring it down. This is essentially like a mini boulder drop and causes a knockdown on Lagiacrus. It's something I've not actually seen before and was super clever, and I had no idea you could do that. They do it twice in fact in this area, baiting Lagiacrus to come over to a different bit of structure rubble and blowing that up as well. Obviously having a huge impact on this run overall, 2 boulder drops and it being 3-star. They make use of the same trick with Lerpods to keep Lagiacrus from leaving, maximizing some trap time as well just to extend some DPS window in the same spot, ultimately ending the hunt in the same area they started in again. So check out this gameplay if you want to see how they do it. Next up, I'm super happy to be talking about this weapon at this stage, which is Hammer, with a tempered Lagiacrus kill in 3 minutes and 35 seconds and 38 milliseconds. So a couple seconds ahead of the last one. It's another 3-star version of the monster, but why I'm so thrilled by this is because of Hammer's multiple updates. You had the damage buffs in the May update, and then more benefits and actual moveset changes with the added offset options in Title Update 2 itself. Everyone's been screaming about Hammer, how much better it is, how much more fun it is. So I've been waiting and excited to see how it would do in one of these ranking videos. This is a solid start for the weapon. To be somewhere roughly in the middle of the pack after being basically at the back for the entire duration of Wilds, this is absolutely fantastic. And it goes beyond just the damage buffs. It's the fact the moveset's so much more enjoyable now and functional. Things that should have been there from the start, like a gap closer after an offset. It's just great to have at long last. They also make use of the barrel bomb technique to blow up a structure in this area they're in. Seems like a great one to actually have the fight take place. And they make use of the various new offsets and familiar offset to actually interrupt the monster in the middle of the fight. Awesome gameplay, go check it out. Alright, here's an exciting one. We're now talking about Charge Blade. This is a Lagiacrus skill that's a 4-star in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. So slightly harder than, the 3-stars we just looked at, but still a faster time. They buffed the hell out of AD, SAD, and all of that elemental stuff. But this player is not using element with this weapon. They're using paralysis for a great DPS window. But they are changing the moveset up a little bit. Something I'm seeing Charge Blade players do a lot in Title Update 2 is skip ED1 and ED2. ED2 was like the most efficient DPS thing we could do. So what I'm seeing now is a lot of AED even from just being in sword and shield because it's a great transfer attack you can do. Then doing the new follow-up that was added in wilds itself for great vial pops, big hits of the actual axe itself, and this actually builds up great KO potential for a knockdown. It was a little trick you do in normal runs where if you could hit the head, you go for the AED in the follow-up instead. But now I'm seeing all these players absolutely spam AED into the follow-up, looping back into the charge blade, smoothly transferring into the AED transformation, then the follow-up, and repeating it. So a new, fun, infinite combo to use that seems incredibly good. Awesome run, go check it out. Moving forward then, we have this absolutely insane gunlance run that is sub 3 minutes against an apparent 5-star Lagiacrus. Absolutely ridiculous is gunlance. How is this absolute domination taking place? Well, it's in that area that we've been looking at with the falling boulder ruins that can help you extend how long this fight takes place. But this player is maximizing every inch of this fight. The way that they're managing the wounds and actually breaking them open, it results in more knockdowns than I'm used to seeing, which results in free DPS, of course. But there is this interesting moment in the run where they turn their sort of wyvern cannon blast into the ruins that fall down when you put a barrel bomb there. I think what this player did was bring the ruins down without needing to take the time to place a barrel bomb mid-fight, which is what everyone else is doing in this area. I guess that cuts into their time, and so it's an incredibly efficient way to get a knockdown that maybe you can only do with this weapon because of that blast. So yeah, some really interesting stuff here. Go check this run out, see what you can learn. Next up then we have Longsword with a 2 minute and 54 second clear with 86 milliseconds. So it is obviously ahead of the last one we just looked at, but the difference here is this is a 3-star compared to that 5-star we just looked at, and with it being so tight, I would argue that this Longsword would technically be behind the last weapon if it was also a 5-star hunt. Also, yes, it's quite blurry and low quality footage. Unfortunately, it's the best we can find and look at. Ultimately, Longsword is absolutely devastating in wilds, and it has been from the start. And with Title Update 2 actually making some changes that make the rest of the moveset a bit better compared to the whole Crimson/1 Spirit Blade 1 combo that we're always seeing. The other follow-ups when you're in red gauge are a little bit stronger. So Longsword was already like on a high. To see any improvements to it wasn't what I was expecting. We do actually see some use of those buff moves as this player uses the Foresight Slash to then go into a round slash into the follow-up, which is that one of the buff moves. So it's cool to see that. The use of focus mode is absolutely incredible though, as they turn it on and off constantly to turn their character. So every time that they Foresight Slash, they move back through the monster's torso to land at a weak point or where they're working on a tempered wound to open. And so you'll see them do that clever trick as well, where they Foresight Slash backwards into the monster as it's doing that big AoE explosion, and then they go into a Helmbreaker to continue to deal DPS instead of being interrupted or having to wait out this one move like other weapons have to. So it sucks that it's a little bit blurry and low quality footage, but my god is this gameplay good. Go check out this run. Next up, in an incredible twist, we have Hunting Horn. Very high up in these rankings, guys. It is indeed a tempered Lagiacrus, but 3-star compared to higher. But still, it's a 2 minute and 54 second clear, just like the Longsword, but 54 milliseconds, so slightly faster. And I do mean slightly. Plus, don't forget that this is a hunting horn, so at the start of the hunt, they have to spend some time doing the songs, buffing up and such there. So they do lose out a bit there in terms of just getting into the fight. Also, this fight takes place in a different area, Area 17, compared to that optimal area we're seeing with the ruins. So maybe if this player can get into Area 14 for their hunt at the start, it could be even better for them. Anyway, it's what you should expect, just this absolute destruction, as this is sort of perfect triangle setup of all the echo bubbles as they reverberate all of those songs, hitting with the melody explosions at the same time. Building up fantastic KO at the head for some knockdowns that other weapons just can't access, and making sure, of course, to move over to those back spikes whenever a knockdown does occur so I can get into that optimal hit zone. There is a ton of knockdowns in this run though compared to other fights, which plays a huge role in their ability to maintain optimal DPS for the entire fight. If you want to learn how to hunting horn, this is the way to do it. Okay, so this brings us to a bit of a weird situation with Insect Glaive. What we have here is a normal Lagiacrus run, not a tempered one, and yet it's what we're showing. The reason for that is because there isn't like a great showing for tempered Insect Glaive available right now. Right now, we're seeing a lot of runners do normal runs instead of tempered. I guess they're learning the fight, and they can get ridiculously short times, like roughly 2 minutes or less, like what we're looking at here, dealt with in 1 minute and 52 seconds. So how would we place this compared to the rest of the rankings fairly? Well, discussing it with Josh, basically, you can compare the normal health pool of a Lagiacrus to the tempered version. So a tempered Lagiacrus has about 33% more health than a normal one. Josh took the normal time and increased that time by not 33%, but about 40 to allow for that extra challenge and possible maybe zone movement, whatever issues that might come up. But obviously this isn't a foolproof method. So using that 40% time increase method, if this was a 3-star tempered monster, we could assume about a 2 minute and 36 second clear, which would still put it ahead of the last weapon we just talked about. We're looking forward to seeing some proper tempered runs for the insect glaive though, so definitely take this ranking and this look with a heavy grain of salt. Still, insect glaive's super strong, we expect it to do well. Absolute last up then is heavy bowgun, where we do not have a good run that we can look at in any version really that's reliable. The best version we have right now is this run, which is an insane 2 minute and 18 second clear. Yes, tempered Lagiacrus, but this player is using heroics, and that's something that we try to not include in these lists. The reason is that it gives such an immense amount of output potential, but it requires you to play at low health, where if you ever take a hit, you're dead. Most players aren't ever going to be doing that. And so it's not really fair to judge a weapon's power and ranking in that context. But since it's absolutely insane gameplay and absolutely insane time, and the best footage and run we can look at, we at least want to talk about it. Where it would actually place in the rankings without heroics, it's hard to say. But to keep it simple here, this player is absolutely smashing these fast shots into the back spikes for the entire fight. Interestingly, it seems like Lagiacrus just gets blinded by flash pods, causing it to be interrupted for a great DPS opportunity, and then it's attacking nothing while this player just stands there and again shoots the hell out of those back spikes for free, resulting in a very controlled fight, if you can call it that, resulting in yet that absolutely ridiculous time, which makes sense in this context. But I would love to see a non-heroics version of heavy bowgun to see where it really places. But there you have it. That's our first look at the weapons and the best runs we could find for overall tempered Lagiacrus. We've had to do a couple of things that are a bit weird here just to give you the best ranking or look that we can, since we're still in that first week of Title Update 2. We plan to come back next week and have a look at Serigos and see how things are doing there. A lot of speedrunners are completely against the idea of Lagiacrus because of the underwater section, even though, you can avoid it clearly. So a lot of people have been doing Serigos where they've not been doing Lagiacrus. It'll be interesting to take a look at that list then and compare the weapons and see what's changed. Until then, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.